Have you ever had that strange feeling that you're living in a science fiction movie but forgot to read the script? You know, that uneasiness that arises when you stop to think that your smartphone has more computational power than all of NASA had when they put men on the moon, but you use it mainly to watch cat videos and argue with strangers on the internet? It's as if we're running toward the future blindfolded, hoping not to crash into anything along the way. And maybe that's exactly what we're doing. Maybe our greatest weakness as a species isn't our dependence on technology, but our complete lack of emotional preparation to deal with the transformations we ourselves have created. Imagine a 5-year-old trying to pilot a supersonic jet. That's roughly how our ancestral psychology is handling the technological revolution of the 21st century. The truth is that we spent millions of years evolving in small groups of hunter-gatherers, developing brains specialized in detecting predators in savannas, and forming alliances in tribes of at most a few hundred people. Our emotional system was calibrated to respond to immediate and tangible threats like lions, snakes, or hostile members of other tribes. We developed very specific and useful fears for that world, anxieties that kept us alive when survival depended on quick reflexes and intuitive decisions based on direct sensory information. Our ancestors didn't need to worry about algorithms manipulating their emotions, viruses spreading through digital networks, or artificial intelligences making decisions that would affect billions of people simultaneously. But then something extraordinary and disturbing happened. In just a few centuries, a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms, we created a world that our psychology cannot adequately process. We began living in cities with millions of people, created economic systems that depend on abstract concepts like credit and inflation, and developed technologies that operate at scales and speeds that completely exceed our capacity for intuitive understanding. It's as if we had put a rocket engine on a horse-drawn cart and expected everything to work perfectly. Think about how you feel when you receive a notification on your phone. There's a small dopamine discharge, a slight anxiety, an almost irresistible compulsion to check what it is, even if you're in the middle of an important conversation or trying to concentrate on some task. Your ancestral brain interprets each notification as a possible threat or social opportunity that requires immediate attention, because in the original environment for which we evolved, ignoring social signals could mean isolation and death. But now, these same emotional responses are exploited by algorithms designed to capture and monetize your attention. You're not simply using technology, you're being used by it, and your evolutionary psychology is the tool that makes this exploitation possible. And this is just the beginning. We're on the threshold of transformations that will make the Industrial Revolution look like a gradual and comfortable change. Artificial intelligence is evolving at exponential speed, promising to automate not only manual jobs, but also many cognitive functions we consider exclusively human. Machine learning systems can already diagnose diseases, compose music, write texts, and make investment decisions more accurately than human experts in many areas. Soon, we'll have AI assistants so sophisticated that it will be difficult to distinguish them from real people in conversations and algorithms capable of predicting our behavior better than we can ourselves. Simultaneously, we are developing gene editing technologies that will allow us to modify not only hereditary diseases, but also characteristics like intelligence, longevity, and even personality traits. Imagine the emotional implications of living in a world where some parents can literally buy genetic advantages for their children, creating a new form of inequality based not only on financial resources, but on fundamental biological capacities. How will our psychology, already overloaded by traditional inequalities, deal with the prospect of a humanity divided between the genetically enhanced and the naturally limited? Virtual reality and augmented reality are creating increasingly convincing parallel universes where people can live experiences that completely challenge our traditional understanding of what is real and what is artificial. Young people are growing up in digital environments where their brains are being literally molded by virtual interactions, developing new neural patterns that we as parents and educators formed in an analog world simply cannot understand or guide adequately. It's as if two different human species were evolving simultaneously, one digital and one analog, with increasingly divergent emotional and cognitive systems. And then there's the prospect of technological singularity, the hypothetical moment when artificial intelligence will surpass human intelligence in all relevant aspects, initiating a period of technological change so rapid and radical that it will become impossible for human minds to predict or control its effects. Some experts believe this could happen in the coming decades. Others are more skeptical. But even the most conservative recognize that we are entering completely unexplored territory in human history. The question that should keep us awake at night isn't whether these transformations will happen, they're already happening. The question is whether we're emotionally equipped to navigate them without losing our collective and individual sanity. And the honest answer, based on how we're dealing with current technological changes, is probably not. Look at the growing levels of anxiety, depression, and political polarization in the most technologically advanced societies. See how people are struggling to maintain meaningful relationships in a world of superficial digital connections. Notice how our capacity for concentration and deep contemplation is being eroded by environments designed to fragment our attention. We're facing what we could call programmed emotional obsolescence. Just as electronics manufacturers design products to become obsolete in a few years, forcing consumers to buy newer versions, our evolutionary psychology is becoming obsolete at an increasingly accelerated pace, but we don't have the option to upgrade. We can't simply download a new version of our emotional capacity or install a patch to fix our existential anxiety in the face of technological uncertainty. But perhaps this apparent fragility is also our greatest strength. Perhaps our inability to adapt perfectly to technological changes is exactly what will keep us human in an increasingly automated world. Our confusion, our anxiety, our desperate need for authentic connection and meaning may be the last bastions of genuinely human experience in a reality increasingly mediated by algorithms. The question isn't whether we should stop technological progress. That would be impossible and probably undesirable. The question is how we can develop emotional literacy adequate for the era we're creating. We need to learn to recognize when our ancestral psychology is being exploited or manipulated. We need to develop strategies to maintain our sanity in environments designed to capture our attention and drain our mental energy. We need to cultivate skills of reflection and contemplation that allow us to make conscious decisions about how we want to interact with the technologies that are shaping our lives. This means learning to create spaces of silence and digital disconnection, not as an escape from reality, but as a way to reconnect with our own values and priorities before returning to the technological whirlwind. It means developing mindfulness practices that help us distinguish between real needs and artificially induced desires by engagement algorithms. It means cultivating face-to-face relationships that anchor us in sensory and emotional experiences that no technology can completely replicate. Perhaps most importantly, it means recognizing that we don't need to have answers to all questions about the future. Our anxiety about the transformations that are coming is in part fueled by the illusion that we should be able to predict and control changes that are inherently unpredictable and uncontrollable. Accepting our ignorance about the future isn't a form of defeatism, but a form of humility that frees us to focus on what we can actually control, which are our emotional and behavioral responses to the present moment. Emotional preparation for the future doesn't happen by thinking obsessively about future scenarios, but by developing resilience and psychological flexibility in the here and now. It's learning to live with uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. It's cultivating the ability to adapt to changes without losing the sense of identity and purpose. It's developing deep human connections that can serve as emotional anchors regardless of whatever technological storms may come. I want to pause for a moment to ask you directly, you who are watching, do you also feel this tension between fascination and terror when you think about the future we're building? This feeling of being dragged by a technological current that you didn't choose nor completely understand? I know it can seem overwhelming when we stop to think about the speed of these changes, and often we prefer simply not to think, to dive into present distractions, to avoid anxiety about what's to come. But you're not alone in this struggle. If this feeling resonates with you, share your experience in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I feel this tension when I think about the future because," and complete with your personal experience. Your reflection might be exactly what another person needs to read to feel less alone facing these existential challenges that we all face in the era of accelerated transformation. Actually, our capacity to feel anxiety about the future may be one of our greatest evolutionary advantages in a world of rapid changes. This restlessness we feel isn't a bug in our emotional system. It's a feature. It's our internal alert system telling us we need to pay attention, that we can't simply let things happen on autopilot. Existential anxiety may be uncomfortable, but it can also be a powerful motivator for developing the wisdom and skills necessary to navigate unknown territory. Consider that previous generations faced their own versions of seemingly impossible transformations. Our great-grandparents lived through the transition from agriculture to industrialization. Our grandparents navigated 2 world wars and the nuclear age. Our parents witnessed the birth of the internet and globalization. In each case, they probably felt they were living in times of unprecedented change, that the world was transforming faster than their capacity for understanding and adaptation. And yet, here we are, living proof that humanity has a remarkable capacity to adapt to circumstances that initially seem impossible to navigate. But our current situation has some unique characteristics that deserve special attention. For the first time in history, we're creating technologies that can potentially surpass us in all the capacities we consider distinctly human. For the first time, we're facing changes that can happen more quickly than our ability to develop social norms and regulatory structures to deal with them. And for the first time, the consequences of our technological choices can affect not only our own civilization, but potentially the entire biosphere and the future of consciousness in the universe. This cosmic responsibility may seem overwhelming for creatures that evolved worrying mainly about the next meal and the safety of the local tribe. But perhaps it's exactly this apparent inadequacy that makes us adequate for the challenge. Our humility before the magnitude of the transformations we're unleashing may be exactly the attitude necessary to navigate them with wisdom. If we felt completely confident and in control, we'd probably be taking even greater and more reckless risks. Emotional preparation for the future, then, isn't about eliminating all anxiety or uncertainty about what's coming. It's about developing a healthier and more productive relationship with these inevitable emotions. It's learning to use our anxiety as a compass that points us toward areas that need our attention and care, instead of letting it paralyze us or make us take impulsive decisions based on fear. This also means recognizing that we're not alone on this journey. One of the ironies of the digital age is that despite being more connected than ever through technology, many people feel more isolated and alienated than previous generations. Part of emotional preparation for the future is rediscovering ways to authentically connect with each other, creating networks of human support that can sustain us through the storms of technological change. Think about how many of your most significant social interactions happen through screens versus face-to-face. Consider how you feel after spending an hour in deep conversation with a close friend compared to how you feel after spending an hour browsing social media. There's a different quality to these types of connection, a depth and a kind of emotional nourishment that cannot be digitally replicated, no matter how sophisticated our virtual communication systems become. Cultivating these deep human connections isn't nostalgia or technophobia. It's strategic preparation for a future where our humanity may be our greatest competitive advantage. In a world of artificial intelligences and widespread automation, the qualities that will make us irreplaceable are precisely those that are most difficult to replicate. Our capacity for genuine empathy, our creativity emerging from lived experiences, our ability to find meaning and beauty amid chaos and uncertainty. And perhaps this brings us back to the original question about emotional preparation. Maybe the real question isn't whether we're ready for what's coming, but whether we are willing to remain vulnerable, curious, and open to growth in the face of the unknown. Maybe our most important preparation is maintaining our capacity to surprise ourselves, to question our assumptions, to change our minds when presented with new evidence. Human history is largely the story of our capacity to adapt to circumstances that our ancestors could never have imagined. Our hunter-gatherer brains learned to navigate cities, operate complex machines, understand abstract concepts like democracy and human rights. Our psychological plasticity may be greater than we imagine, especially when we are challenged by necessity and supported by communities that value both tradition and innovation. The future we're building isn't something that's happening to us. It's something we are actively creating through our individual and collective choices. Every time we decide how to use a new technology, every time we vote for politicians who will shape technological policies, every time we choose which values to prioritize amid changes, we're participating in creating that future. Our emotional preparation, then, includes recognizing our agency and responsibility in this process. This doesn't mean we have total control over what will happen, far from it, but it means we are not passive victims of inevitable technological forces. We're active participants in a global conversation about what kind of future we want to create, and our emotional health and mental clarity are essential resources for participating in this conversation constructively. If these reflections have touched something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found words to express, know that you're not alone. By subscribing to the channel, you'll connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the challenges we face in times of accelerated transformation. Each week, we meet here to explore together the great questions that define our era and to seek not only understanding, but also wiser ways to live amid the changes we're witnessing. This isn't just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth,
where your perspective and experience contribute to a larger conversation about how to navigate with wisdom and courage in a constantly transforming world. Join us on this continuous journey.
Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with purpose and hope in the face of the uncertain but fascinating future we are creating together.
What I try to do in all my works is help people understand themselves, help people understand reality better. It's a very delicate job because people usually rush to judge reality and to judge history, to judge the past and the present. We want to know who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, whether things are good or bad. When we rush to judge things, we don't have time to understand them. In my writing, I try to write history without villains, without good guys and bad guys, but to understand the deep process of change. And I sometimes think about history maybe as a kind of collective therapy.
One of the things I liked about Buddhism is that belief to some extent is of course important. If you don't believe that going to a meditation retreat will help you in some way, you won't go there. But the belief in itself doesn't do anything for you. It's your ability to actually observe the reality without reaction, without judgment, to just see things as they are. This is what liberates.
If humans are so wise, why are we doing so many self-destructive things? Why are we on the verge of committing ecological and technological suicide? Hi, my name is Yuval Noah Harari. You may know some of my books, which include Sapiens and Homo Deus. I want to tell you a bit about my new book, Nexus, A Brief History of Information Networks from the Stone Age to AI. In the 21st century, AI may form the nexus for such a powerful network of delusions that it could prevent future generations from even attempting to expose its lies and fictions. As an essential background for understanding the threat and the promises of AI, Nexus explores the long-term history of information networks. It examines the Roman Empire, the Catholic Church, the Soviet Union, and many other past networks in order to highlight what is really new about AI. I hope you enjoy deep diving into all this and more within the pages of Nexus.